What happened to Country Joe and the Fish?
Born on January 1st, 1942, Joe McDonald grew up in El Monte, raised in a leftist family with a strong focus on political activities and music. His early gigs included playing trombone in jazz groups and guitar in folk bands. After serving in the Navy, he returned to music and produced his first album. He also edited a radical magazine called Et Tu. Settling in Berkeley, he became part of the folk scene, performing solo and forming groups like the Berkeley String Quartet and the Instant Action Jug Band. Country Joe and the Fish emerged from these connections, initially as a recording alias. The band's name was suggested by E.D. Denson and referred to the metaphor of the fish who swim in the sea of the people. Their music was rooted in folk and jug band styles, evolving into a rock sound with electric instruments. They produced a self-produced EP in 1966 that gained them gigs in San Francisco. Vanguard Records signed the band, intrigued by their electric sound and daring political themes. The band's mix of rock's rebellious attitude and political awareness was impactful during a time when the Vietnam War was contentious. Maynard Solomon, impressed by the band's recordings produced by Sam Charters at Sierra Sound, included Superbird on the debut album Electric Music for the Mind and Body, despite excluding the popular I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die rag. The album, released in February 1967, blended blues, jazz, folk, and rock into a mesmerizing psychedelic sound. The absence of a hit single didn't deter its success, as Not So Sweet Martha Lorraine gained college radio airplay and the album peaked in the top 40. This album remains a significant landmark of the era, comparable to other notable releases of 1967. Encouraged by the positive response, Vanguard Records had the band record a follow-up album titled I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die. It featured the title track as its lead, embracing the boldness of the song. The album's accessible sound showcased McDonald's singing ability and cemented the band's artistic and commercial peak. The LP included a satirical insert, The Fish Game, adding a playful touch. Country Joe and the Fish continued to tour nationally, gaining recognition for their use of light shows and performance at the Monterey Pop Festival. I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die rag took on a life of its own, and its altered lyrics at a performance further propelled its popularity during a time of changing national mood and the Vietnam War. By that time, however, the best days of the band were over. In the fall of 1967, someone managed to convince McDonald that he was the real star of the group. Amid the ensuing turmoil, the Fish split up. It didn't last long, and they were eventually reassembled into a whole band, but the hiatus cost them dearly. Their third album together was recorded during this turmoil. McDonald was almost invisible on most of the album, and Melton and Hirsch were the dominant performers. The group managed to tour Europe and saw more demand for their performances in the US as well. The continuing controversy of the Vietnam War helped keep the popularity high, and the growing underground enthusiasm for I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die rag sustained them. At last, the lineup began coming apart at this point. Bruce Barthol was dismissed in mid-1968, and Chicken Hirsch was gone by the end of the year. Their next album, Here We Are Again, released in the spring of 1969, was the debut of the new lineup of the group, which, apart from the Airplanes' Jack Cassidy singing on bass, it had David Getz, late of Big Brother and the Holding Company, on drums. David Cohen's exit led to an all-star jam, including Jerry Garcia and Steve Miller, credited to the band at the Fillmore West, which was recorded and subsequently released as a Country Joe and the Fish live album. The lineup stabilized around McDonald, Melton, Getz, and Peter S. Albin of Big Brother for 6 months in 1969. McDonald reassembled the band for its appearance at Woodstock, and a final lineup of Melton, Mark Kapner on keyboards, Doug Metzner on bass, and Greg Dewey on drums, was the one that took advantage of the momentum coming off of that performance. In the spring following the festival, McDonald embarked on a solo career, returning to his roots with an album of Woody Guthrie songs and followed it up a year later with the electric blues album Hold On, It's Coming. He remained committed to ending the Vietnam War, participating in demonstrations and appearing on stage with the FTA Show, a satirical anti-military review that yielded a movie of the same name and eventually earned a place on President Richard Nixon's Notorious Enemies list. Melton continued in music into the 1970s, but later became a lawyer. Over the decades and well into the 21st century, McDonald cut numerous solo albums and performed extensively. He also revived Rag Baby. He periodically reunited with Melton, whose presence is essential for the official use of the Country Joe and the Fish name, and Cohen, Barthol, and Hirsch in the wake of the war in Iraq. He's become an almost mythic figure in the agit-prop scene since the early 80s, when he resumed his activist work wherever the American government seemed hell-bent on turning troops loose to kill people. He's there with his music trying to answer the call to arms with something else. There are at least 2 existent best of compilations devoted to the band, and in 1994, the Rag Baby EPs were reissued on compact disc. In 2018, Kraft Recordings issued the retrospective 4LP box set The Wave of Electrical Sound. The limited edition deluxe package included the band's first 2 influential albums from 1967 and I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die, the latter released in both mono and stereo versions on 180-gram vinyl. The mono version of Electric Music for the Mind and Body featured rare alternate cover artwork. The Wave of Electrical Sound also contains a plentiful amount of ephemera from 1967, including replicas of the Fish Game, a Fish Fan Club book, and a Fish calendar designed by Tom Weller. Also included is a DVD of How We Stopped the War, a 30-minute documentary filming the band on their way to an anti-Vietnam War rally, directed by David Peoples, writer of Blade Runner, 12 Monkeys, and Unforgiven, and a 24-page book comprised of rare photos, artwork, and a new liner essay from writer, producer, and musician Alec Paleo. Unfortunately, bassist Bruce Barthol died on February 20th, 2023 at the age of 75. Gary Hirsch passed away in Ashland, Oregon on August 17th, 2021 at the age of 81. And that's what happened to Country Joe and the Fish. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and give me some facts about the band that I failed to mention, and let me know who I should do next on the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.